Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Eggs, the podcast. Today's special guest is Troy Hipolito, founder of the Troy Agency. Troy, how are you, man? Thanks for doing the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thrilled to have you.
Yeah, I think we linked this up on LinkedIn. I saw a post of yours, and your law of attraction kind of worked. So I reached out and said, hey, do you want to come on the show? And here we are. So you want to tell a little about yourself, how you got it to be the LinkedIn guy, and you started out in the military?
Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't start being a LinkedIn guy in the military, but
yeah.
I spent some time in the military, Army, mostly reserves. I also had an IT background. So how I got into LinkedIn, it's pretty interesting. I had an IT company. I'm in Las Vegas now, but I was in Atlanta, Georgia then. And we were doing really well, relatively well, and had a small crew, designers and developers. We had gamification. We were doing stuff for Coca-Cola, Xbox, and Harry Potter movie releases, virtual worlds and stuff. All the cool, fun stuff, apps and sites and stuff back then. And so it was really great because we're doing stuff that other people couldn't. So it was just a really great and creative environment. And the business crashed. And it crashed very suddenly, and we couldn't figure out why. We get most of the work through the agencies, and so agencies are pretty cutthroat type business. And we found out the Fortune 500 companies cannibalized most of the agencies and brought them in house, and so they're all fighting over the same pennies. And so they would block us from work because we had a very strong portfolio and things like that. And so we're like, oh, what are we going to do for business now? We have a great portfolio, but these companies don't really, they don't want to do work with us because they have their teams in house. And so we looked at LinkedIn. I talked to a buddy. He says, yeah, it's all about relationship building. And I was really bad at that. I'm a doer. You give me a problem, I solve it. I'm not here to make niceties and all that. And so I found out that I was in real life a terrible dater, because I'm very direct, right? So it's like the worst dating person you can be, right? It's like walking up to this beautiful woman and saying, "I would like to have get married, have a white picket fence, and the dog and everything." It's like way too much, because I cut to the chase, and most humans don't work that way, so I'm the weird one. And so I was really good at systems. So what we did was we developed systems to slow date businesses on LinkedIn. And so that really opened my eyes because I was good at systems. I said, well, what is the procedural steps in order to connect with businesses? And then we got a lot of business in through LinkedIn. And I said, I can do this for other people. And we started, it was a returning client at the time, but then we changed it to the Troy Agency, and it worked pretty well. And I only take on a few clients a month, and I help them with their bookings, branding, and they're increasing their business. So there's a lot of systems involved, but there's also a lot of personalization. And not everyone is a good client because a lot of them just want to sell something, and if it's a widget, it's fine. If it's a thing, it's fine. But if it's a high-end service, you have to build that relationship. And so that's where the major gap that we help cover where that lies. So,
yeah. Well, one thing I think is interesting about what you just said, and you just hit on it, was this idea that not everyone's a good client and being somewhat selective in the work you take. What's interesting about that to me is, so some years ago, we hired a company we run a little marketing agency ourselves. Mm-hmm. And we hired a company to help us with booking and try and, get sales coming in. Basically, mm-hmm. Our business was built as an extension of my freelance career. And so all our clients came by word of mouth and friend of a friend and stuff like that. And honestly, still largely do. But, but it was sort of the slowest burn in business, right? I mean, it's a tough way to scale a business when everything hinges on one guy in the company. And so we were really trying to push and get outside of that. So we asked around, we found a company to use based in Arizona, mm-hmm. and they started putting together, whatever systems they use, and started booking us things. Well, almost every booking they got us were people that I already knew. And they were people who we already knew and were already doing business with us. So it was like, so the people that they referred to us were no good. And then the other meetings they booked for us were basically people who weren't really looking for our service. Rather, they were just filling a queue. And so our reps, the people who were going out and approaching people for sales on our behalf, were basically, making sure that they got our bookings, but there was no quality control around the bookings, right? And then
there was no relationship building either,
right?
And that actually takes time. So if someone's going to spend, $5,000-$10,000 a month or whatever it is on a service, they're not going to openly do that so easily, not especially nowadays. Yeah. So they got to make sure that, hey, is this guy legit? Do I feel like I want to work with this person? Will this person help me build these relationships and convert into the meetings that I need to in order to grow my business? And so marketing or sales, they're kind of two ends of the same coin, where you have to kind of, again, build that relationship. You can't sell on LinkedIn. So there's no real selling, although we have business on LinkedIn. You don't sell. I always say provide value to the right people. So if I have a meeting, and I have two sets of meetings. I have a meet and greet, and then I have a business meeting. And so the meet and greet is pretty open, but my thing is just to listen to what they have going on. They'll tell you their pain, if there's an option to move forward, and then you have things like will slow down the number of meetings. So I don't have a problem getting a lot of meetings. More than often, you want mechanism to slow down, have less meetings. For example, on my LinkedIn profile, if you look at my banner, I tell you exactly who I work with and how much money you need to make, because to afford the services. On my booking link, I ask them for their budgets. I don't care if it's a meet and greet or whatever. I want to slow down, because if someone gets offended, it's like, oh no, then there would never be a client or a good connection anyway. And so you have to have those, So you have to have those good mechanisms in place to get some of those right individuals, and also the client that you want to bring on board. Don't take their money unless you have a very high certainty of success, that you can give them success. So there's certain personalities that don't do well. There's certain areas, there's certain industries that are harder than others, and there's certain dollar amounts. So if they have a $1,200 service a month versus a $7,000 service a month, it's not just technically different; it's volume different. It's the whole approach is different, and the whole process is different. So some areas where we work with the client, where they have their hands in the cookie jar because they're smaller and they want to be more intimate with it. And there's times where we have clients that have a larger budget that they still want to handle their little area, but we add volume in other ways to make sure they're getting the meetings they want, and it kind of makes sense for their particular ICP. So it really depends on what's actually needed. And this is the biggest thing, especially on the smaller clients. They always say, hey, oh no, I know how to talk to people and I can close a deal. Sometimes they don't know how to talk to people and they can't close a deal. Even me, I don't like sales. I don't like closing deals, and I learn stuff all the time. So is that client coachable? It's like I learn stuff about me all the time. One thing, and I have my own coach. I'm a coach. I'm a LinkedIn coach, but I hire coaches. And because I can't see sometimes, beyond the trees, so to speak. So I can't see what's happening because I deal with things the way I deal with. And it shouldn't be about me. It should be how those other people are thinking and perceiving stuff. So I found out not recently, but I'm rediscovering myself to identify that I give too much information, because that's how I receive information. And most people cannot absorb a lot of information. So I'm learning about these calls, just keep it shorter. Even if they ask for it specifically, reduce that time in, because even if they ask for it and you give them the right answer, they may not be able to comprehend the amount of information needed,
Sure.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. Yeah. And just to sort of put a bow on the point I was trying to make earlier, it's exactly what you're saying. By first of all, just in terms of client acquisition, being able to make sure that you're going to be able to win or do a good job for these people. We found out later that this sales company, even though they said they had experience with marketing agencies, didn't really, and or didn't have any like meaningful experience with them anyway. So, and to your other point about relationships and how important it is to actually, develop a relationship, something real and authentic with a prospective client. These guys did a very superficial version of that, right? They had a couple automated emails, a couple automated posts, things like that, but no real relationship, nurturing. It was more
I don't
about
think people
volume
know
and
what
stuff
that
like that.
is. That's a good point, Ryan. I don't think people know what relationship building is, especially if they're outside the circles of like certain countries that have certain ways of doing business and stuff. And so in the States, in Westerns, we talk a certain way. So we don't have regular English. We have what we call business English. And there's a certain flow that goes along with that. So if someone reaches out to me, giving value or building a relationship is number one, listening. And number two, if they have a problem, if you can solve it right then and there, it's never a bad thing to do. If it requires consultation, that's a different thing. But a lot of times they'll have a problem that I can't solve because I'm not the expert at everything. Say, for example, they have problems with their email. And then I'll look at it. I'm like, yeah, these are basically the issues that happen with email. But I can't fix your problem. So maybe I should give you to my email expert. And so it's all about that network. So providing value is just helping that individual. So when you help someone, there's three things. One of three things can happen. Number one, they'll never talk bad about you. That's good. Because one bad client is like, takes 10 good clients to replace that one bad client,
Yeah.
The second thing is if you solve their problem quite quickly and they're happy, they'll look at their business if they have a budget. They'll look at their business and they're like, you know what, Troy helped me out with this thing, but now I see 20 other issues that I need Troy to solve. He will hire you, or he or she will hire you. The other thing is that, well, if they can't work with you, you can always get a recommendation. And so someone else tooting your horn is much more powerful than you tooting your own horn, because they come from a trusted source and they don't know you. So if they trust you through another person, closing a deal is much easier.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I'll get a connection request on LinkedIn, and then I look at their profile, and it looks like a solid business person, someone who might be in the same industry or just wants to connect to follow my work or vice versa. And then within a day, I get a message that's an instant sales pitch, wanting to jump on a call and talk about the services they provide. And then I don't reply. And then because it's obviously not
Automated.
what I want. Yeah. And then 2 days later, I get another. And then 3 days later, I get another. And then I remove the connection request because I don't want to keep getting these emails. Is there a more tactful approach to get the connection request and get a conversation going?
Well, I would say rule number one, don't connect with anyone unless you really want to.
Sure.
Don't accept everyone's connections. So just take a look at it. You'll save yourself some pain. If you feel like if your gut tells you, I don't want to connect with this person, then don't do it. I don't have an exact science on it, but we're all adults. We're all smart enough to do that. The other thing is that I try to communicate in a way that gets me the best results. So if I communicate in a way, I try to be authentic. For example, a lot of people use LinkedIn emails, message sequences on the DMs, right? They one message out after the other, like you mentioned. I don't do that. You can use the automation for like connecting, maybe for a portion of them, but your conversation should be really authentic. And so the more authentic you can be, the more that you can stand out. We actually filled a gap with LinkedIn. We saw a market gap and how to be authentic, how to stand out on LinkedIn. And we created a product called Scoop, Skoop. It just went live last week. So we're
Nice.
just picking up users. We just picked up a distributor. We'll get to see how that works out. And we spent 6 months on it, but we had ideas from years before. Anyway, long story short, it's a Chrome extension. You can just type in SKOOP for Chrome Store, and then you'll be able to find it. But if you create a candid video, and the candid video is like 30 seconds, 40 seconds long, and you just tell them, thank you for connecting. I see you're doing A, B, and C. I have a great network. Not sure you have time or not, but if you can take a look at my profile, if you see any dots to connect there, feel free to send me your booking link, and I'm always open for a conversation. Thank you very much. Have a great day, and hopefully we'll talk soon. Just something that the ask is equal to the current relationship. So what happens is when you send a candid message like that, a very short video that's not selling anything, you do a couple of things. You separate yourself from other people. They know that you're a real person. You spent time on that video for that person. It's not some kind of AI type thing, and you're actually talking about things that are specific to them, and you actually took the effort to do it. And so people appreciate that personalization. So that's another thing I would do is I would keep the messages personalized as much as possible. And that will lower stuff. And another thing too is if you send a video and they have an automated system checking stuff, then they'll never see the video anyway, because they can't comprehend their systems. If it's not text, they can't tell. So you can separate a lot of that by some of that personalization. Now, you can use your power for good, and you can also use your power for evil. So you don't want to do the same sales pitch unless it's a widget or something. It's a thing. That's kind of if it's a low cost thing, it's a different thing. But usually those aren't too popular on LinkedIn. But you don't want to have all the same bad habits on LinkedIn. So the other thing I would say is form good habits, form good relationships for parallel businesses. So I do LinkedIn. I have other LinkedIn people. I'm a LinkedIn coach, and certain LinkedIn coaches are better for something else. I have email people. I have IT people, IT companies. So if they come with me with a problem, it's usually in that sphere somewhere. And if I can hand them business, logically, I would probably get a kickback, right? So good business. You hand them to someone that's very reliable. They convert. Everyone's happy. So I think there's a big selfishness going on. LinkedIn has over a billion users, and I think it was last time almost 18% are active every single day. 18% of that's a huge market. So instead of thinking about competition, think about collaboration, because there's more than enough business for everyone. And so when you got the mindset of actually able to network or partner and actually help each other, it makes your whole process a lot better. Sorry, Mike, for the long answer, but
No, I appreciate it. Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that you kind of brought up there, is the selfishness, or this sort of, I think is sort of born from that kind of feast-famine cycle that so many people suffer with, which is they're not consistent in sales, they're not consistent in outreach, and then they get busy and they're overwhelmed, and then all the business goes away and they don't have a pipeline. And so I think that we tend to, and speaking from having done this as a younger person, you feel this pressure to hurry up and get a quick win. So you end up being a little bit aggressive. And you said something in there that was like, the ask should be relevant or equal to the current relationship. And I think there's this predisposition, maybe because of just access to people who are sort of, I don't want to say like socially above you, but, maybe more advanced in their career or higher up in a company than maybe you ought to be talking to. Because I can reach the CEO of, I don't know, some company, name your company, on the internet, or via LinkedIn, or maybe I can scrub his email from somewhere or whatever. For me, Mr. No-Name Marketer, to just go to the CEO and be like, oh yeah, no, Intel would love me. It's like, no, it doesn't make any sense. The two requests aren't, they're not on the same level. So I think that idea of making sure that the request that you got is commensurate with the relationship that you have, I think is a really good insight.
Yeah, so let's touch on that. If I connected with you, if I sent you a video and take time to do that, and you're watching the video, I could ask something. Because number one, we connected. You watched the video, you saw value in that, and in some respect. Asking them, say, if you have a moment, take a look at my profile. Again, only if you have time. And the other thing is, I tell them if they see any dots to connect there, send me your booking link. I didn't say I'm sending you my link. So there's a big difference. I put the ball in their court. And so that ask is equal to the current relationship. Now, would I say, hey, thanks for connecting, buy my stuff? That's a big no-no, because I just connected with you. And now you're slap pitching me. So there's a difference between slap pitching and just having a request, again, like you said, equal to the current relationship. Now, if I had 2 or 3 meetings, sometimes I will get bold. And I'm like, look, we already had like 3 meetings. I said, is this something that you feel that you solved already? And I'll get down to brass tacks, but that's only at a certain point, because how much time are you going to spend on someone where you could be spending, in a different area? Because at the end of the day, we have the light bills to pay, baby needs shoes and all that sort of thing. So you have to have a certain tolerance on what's helpful. I think another thing
to your point, I would just add to that little comment there that, at that point, the relationship table is sort of turned. Right now, you've given your time, you've done your meetings, you've done your things. So now, regardless of their position or status in a company or whatever, you've given and they're not reciprocating. And so all of a sudden, the relationship is now lopsided the other direction. So I think it does make fair to adjust your strategy and try to, either shut the situation down or maybe get a little bit more forward and just be like, look, are we doing this or aren't we? Like, what are we doing here?
You have to have a good sense of that. And I'm learning myself. I'm very good at implementing a lot of these things, but on the sales side, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. And so what I try to do is I just try to take common sense approach, and I try to listen to my calls, and I try to figure out, oh, did I frame this call properly? And so self-reflection is really good, because once you do that, you actually hear more from the other person, believe it or not. You're just more aware, more in the moment. And those things are super important, because 80% of the buying decisions is if they just like you. It's not the technical stuff. It's not that's their check boxes. It's an assumption that you can do the work, right? But if they don't like you, they're not going to give you their money. So there's a litmus test. So if this person that I met is open to go to a bar, a high-end bar, have a drink and have a conversation, then you pass the litmus test. I don't know if people know what litmus is. I'm over 50 now, so I just realized that might not be like, what is he talking about? Litmus test is that when you dip that piece of paper and you check the chemical and if it can pass or not, if it's high acid or whatever. But anyway, it's a test to see if you pass or not. And the reason I'm saying that, even if they can't, even if you're in 2 different cities, you can't do it. If that person would want to do that, you're in the trusted zone. And they see you as entry-level 1 friend, at least. Because this is what would happen in real life. All right, I'm a busy guy. I'm a business guy. I'm going to take out time to have a drink with with Mike, right? And Mike and me are going out to high-end, and we're gonna shoot the, I can't curse here, but the SHIT. Sure. We're gonna talk about stuff. And what happens when we have drinks? We all know this. We talk about personal stuff because we're trying to connect a friendship, right? So if I was having if I was married and having problems, or I had clients screwing me over, or something, why would I share this to someone I would not trust? These are personal or they're business things that are happening. And you're going to talk about some of that. So you never want to put yourself in a position to be that frank or that open unless you have a level of trust. So I always think about, is that vibe there? Does this individual trust me? How can I help this person? And so a lot of business is really not about that solution. It's about how he is as a person. How do I relate to him? For example, I was in the Army. I'm a single father. I'm of a certain age. I have an IT background. All those things are things that can relate to someone, because people want to hang out with people they can know, like, and eventually trust.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. And actually, I had an opportunity to talk to Bob Berg, who's one of the guys sort of credited with this idea of people know you, like you, trust you.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been using it wrong for years, but he kindly corrected me, and it was very nice of him. But and
I'm sure you're doing other things better than me.
He's also he's a very humble dude too. So he was, not trying to take the credit for it. But I think back to our earlier conversation about relationships, like that's kind of the whole thing, right? And I will warn you, I mean, if you try and take Mike out to a nice bar, he's not the cheapest drunk. So, you probably, probably want to pick a cheaper date than Mike.
Steak.
It's going to be all high-end cocktails and everything, it's going to be a real problem with Mike. But
I like...
Now he'll probably just get a craft beer and call it a day.
Exactly. I was about to say,
you
I
look
like
like
the
a
IPAs.
craft beer guy. Yeah, I'm a liquor guy. I'm simple.
Yeah. But I think that, so many people, I think they throw out words like we even mentioned the word earlier, authenticity. And, but I think what passes for authenticity a lot of times is people just trying, and maybe it is kind of what you were saying, which is people say too much, right? We're trying to be maybe more open than we're supposed to be. And again, I think this takes us back to that idea of making sure you have a balanced relationship. Mm-hmm. So, but your metaphor of the bar or somebody being willing to, take a relationship to that level, it sort of shows that you've already broke down a number of those barriers. We're already into the know you space. We're already into the like you space. I'll talk to you a little more and decide if I trust you or not. But
yeah, and at the end of the day, if there's something of value to them, that's really where your heart should be. Can I help them solve their problem? That's really, if you can get in that zone where, he says, well, I have A, B, and C going on, and say, have you tried to do this? And it's not always about solving the problem in its entirety. Sometimes it's about reducing that pain, So some people don't want to be left holding the bag unless, if they have a go-to person to kind of solve that and allow them to move forward. And that's what people are always looking for. They're looking for that in a product. They're looking at that in a consultation. They're looking at that in a business dealings and that sort of thing. So that really has to be there. The other person has to feel like they're getting more than they're giving.
Yeah. I want to step back and talk about the video approach that you've talked about, and highlight it in more of a personal stuff, something that's happened to me directly. When I have a client reach out on my website, back in the day, I used to just send a generic email outline. Congratulations, thanks for reaching out. Congrats on I do a lot of wedding stuff. So congrats on your engagement, and I'm looking forward to this and that, whatever. And this is what I provide. You can look at photos of this, and this is my rate. And it was just a generic, this is what you get kind of thing. And I had decent success. A lot of my people that would be requesting me in the first place have already seen me perform, know what I can do, and what, this and that. And this year I've kind of this year and last year, actually, I took a different approach, and I started calling them directly. And I would, if they didn't answer the phone, I'd leave a message, and then I'd try calling again after they knew my number. And having that direct conversation and saying, hey, Julie at such and such venue, and I love working at that venue, and talking about why they picked that venue, and the catering and the photographers I've worked with, and so on and so forth. It lets them know that I've been around, and I know the industry, and I know how to help them. And I'll make suggestions on, hey, do you know someone to do your hair? Do you have a wedding planner? Whatever. Just having the conversation versus a generic email that you send out goes so much further to build that trust and to get the client to actually like you as a person. And I like
you're connecting the dots. So you're saying, oh, Julie knows so-and-so's wedding. So you're putting thought into it and relating the conversation around Julie or whoever you're talking to and moving that. So you're actually taking a very personal approach. And that conversation, those personal approach, and it's not about you, it's about them. So when you're creating conversation around them, they feel special. And humans are really, I don't say greedy, but we're really selfish. So if I hear my name a lot, I'm gonna like that person, unless I just don't like the person. like, oh, that guy's a douchebag. I don't care what he says, But if they like you and you're talking about them, of course you're building a relationship a lot faster on that personal level. So you're doing exactly what's needed. I'm not saying the email is a bad idea. It's just I think the email is another channel,
Yeah.
And so you have to have multiple channels. So it's not about LinkedIn. You talk about, we got people who call. We got people that will DM. We got people that will email. We got texting. You got content going back and forth on like LinkedIn content is a big one. So on LinkedIn, the two big areas are the LinkedIn DM, which people don't do very well. And that's why we created the Scoop product to kind of solve some of that problem. And then they have all the content in there. And so and then they also have a LinkedIn Live, and I moved my LinkedIn Live to a podcast. And so you have LinkedIn newsletters. You have all these different channels that point back to you. So I actually get calls. I had 2 calls last week that said, "Yeah, I've been seeing your content for a while." I said, "Yeah, we're connected like a year ago." So they call literally a year later. And they say, I have this problem, I need to get fixed and stuff, right? So you never know what channels that come through, but you want to have those channels in place. And the more that you can personalize those channels, the better. And that's exactly what you're doing. You're not killing your email, but you're taking an additional approach because it's an additional channel of volume there,
Yeah. I'll even go as far as to get their Instagram handle and follow them on Instagram and like some of their photos and, develop that connection that way. So even when I show up to the event, I can see their face, I know their person, and I can talk about, oh, that post was cool, whatever, just trying to build that relationship more versus I'm just here to provide this service and disappear. I used to be that guy. I used to be the guy that would, show up, provide the entertainment, and leave and never talk to him again, never see him again. I'll even, at this stage in my career, on their anniversary, I'll send them a message and say, hey, congrats, guys. Because by doing that, it puts them in their mind and like, oh, Sarah's getting married now. We should tell him to hire this guy. The referral thing, it just is staying up on stuff like that. You're
probably at the top, your top 5%, top 2% of the individuals that do that business because they're not going to remember anyone else, Mike. Yeah. They don't remember Mike. Mike talked to me. These other people didn't give a hoot. So I like Mike. I want to work with Mike. And I'm going to suggest Mike to other people. I mean, it's a simple process. I think that it's not simple to always do because it takes work, right? So sales and marketing, it actually takes work. So people want to push a magic button and make everything happen. And you can't push a button for relationships. So
yeah. Well, and it's one of those things, I mean, just to kind of keep this conversation going, but also to maybe err a little philosophical is, I've been talking a lot lately about like what's going on with AI and what's going to end up happening. And I think contrary to, maybe popular opinions or maybe even reality, I suspect that you're actually going to see a rise in this high touch human relationship stuff in the not too distant future. I think that AI has
already happening.
Yeah. I think AI has got the potential to sort of cannibalize itself. And fill the internet with so much noise that it just becomes useless. And when everything isn't authentic and everything is fake, it's like, I would just rather go with the guy I know or who did your wedding or who did, I can't even get online because I get 50 DJs a day that are hitting me up with the same message. And it's like, what am I supposed to do? Instead I'll ask my friend and my friend will tell me because I'd rather go with the sure thing than dink around with all this AI stuff.
Yeah, it's like if you were an agency of models, right? And you have all the blondes there, and then you have one brunette. That brunette is getting some attention. It's just having that, being that different individual in there, and that difference is personal interaction. It definitely makes sense. And of course, systems work too, and in some cases, volume work. So it's harder to reach people. You have to do volume in certain ways, but you have to have a certain way about doing it. You know, for example, if we have a client, what we do is step number one, we either redo their whole profile, LinkedIn personal profile entirely, or we at least update it. Because LinkedIn tends to want to match you with people like you. Well, people like you might not be your ICP or ideal, client profile. And so you have to SEO it in a way where LinkedIn will actually bring people to you that's within your ICP. And then you look at, okay, I'm targeting these individuals. How do I create conversations around it? And so you create a campaign around that. And at least you have an understanding of the flow of the conversation after you connect. And then you could have another, you can move from LinkedIn direct message to email. So emails have to be sequences, which is opposite of LinkedIn. Because if you don't send 3 emails, they'll never see it. So you have to do certain things opposite on other platforms. Versus on LinkedIn, you want to keep that as manual as possible. Because LinkedIn will see, hey, this is a sequence. They'll move it to the other folder and they'll never see it. That's why all the people are using these sequences. They don't get any replies because no one ever sees them. They don't know that. They think, oh, more, so you have to have a little strategy around that. And on those messages, you have to think about, how can I provide value to this segment of this person? What would lower their pain and allow them to be more successful in the things that they're doing? So you're talking about from DMs, move to email, in some cases move to a text. In certain industries, it's not appropriate to do that. And then we have people that will call. So you're looking at from connection, even before connection, you may interact with their content. So if you're really thinking that I want to, just like you said, Mike, I will hit them up on Instagram, or I'll follow them on Instagram, or I'll comment on Instagram. Well, there's content on LinkedIn too. So if I'm creating content and someone's having conversations on content, and the author replies back, next week, if I send them, or 3 days later, if I send him a connection request, the probability of them connecting moves from 20, 30 to 80%,
Yeah.
So
Usually,
you got to think about pre-engagement and all those different systems as well.
Usually, if I come across a profile of someone I want to connect with on LinkedIn, for example, I'll go and look at their recent posts, and I'll look at, like, oh, he's talking about React or Next.js, or software is kind of what I use LinkedIn for. And I'll be like, hey, I really enjoyed your post about X. Wanted to connect so I could follow your work. That's my quick go-to note to get the connection going. And it works probably 80% of the time. And then once that connection's built, I'll follow them and I'll like posts and I comment on posts. And I just kind of use it as a, way to get them in their radar. And then, like, a lot of the times I'll be trying to get them on the show, and then after 2 or 3 back and forths, then I'll ask them about, hey, do you want to be a guest on the podcast? And instead of just going direct with the cold approach, saying, hey, you look cool, you want to have a conversation on our show, here's our booking link, I get that back and forth going first, and that usually works pretty good.
That makes sense. So you got to know how much work you got to do versus how little work. So you got to know what's appropriate, in other words. So you can actually overdo it as well. You can be nice to him to death and waste a lot of time because that might not be the right ICP. So you just got to understand, like, the cycle. So what we do for most clients is we start from the engagement part, and then we'll move from a connection to a conversation. If they don't see that, after a couple of weeks, we'll move to email. And then it may be, if they seem still an ICP, you can relate to a phone call. But that whole cycle is not immediate. it's a course of time. So if I had to give a time frame between one cycle, it would be 6 weeks to 12 weeks for that. And so this again is slow dating. And when you're reaching out to them, I'm telling you the mechanical stuff. The meat is really how you're reaching out, what you're saying. Are you providing actual value? Not what I think's value, it's what they think's value. What most salespeople think's valuable is selling their stuff. So it's kind of irrelevant. So, so you do need systems in place, and you often want to have multiple channels. So I consider content on LinkedIn a channel. I consider DM a channel. I consider email a channel. I have a newsletter, LinkedIn, that has thousands and thousands of people. That's a channel. I have my email list that I build. I send out a blast once or twice a month about something's happening. I have a podcast that's a channel. My lives do pretty well. Sometimes they get like 600-700 people registered in a couple of weeks. So I also have interesting guests and stuff like that. So I want to provide value to the audience, and of course I want to make money with it too. And I'm finding out because of my IT background, a product is sometimes easier than consultation, like consulting, excuse me, because consulting is a lot of work. And I don't think that on the tail end, a lot of people appreciate that. Like, they'll just hire someone to build something, but they don't understand the difference between having a Yugo car. Do you guys know what that is? I think I'm talking French. Okay. A Yugo and then a nice BMW. You don't want to have a Lamborghini, but a BMW is suffice for what they need to get done, and it looks good. It goes where it needs to go. But you can't pull up to a business meeting with a Yugo, And so a lot of people don't know the difference between a Yugo and a BMW. They just don't, and they miss the boat. So it's good that the things that you're doing, Mike, because it sounds like you have a daily process to do. I actually have a guide. It's a LinkedIn daily process guide I give away for free. I just give away for the paid clients. If anyone wants that, feel free to reach out. But it just allows you to say, hey, I don't have all day to muck around on LinkedIn or email, whatever this stuff is. I have a business to run. So as a business owner, your main job should be to not have your hands in everything, but to run the company, run the vision, grow the company. Those are the things that business owners really should do if they can remove some of those hats or some of those jobs. So we're always finding ways to reduce time. So the guide that I have, if anyone's interested, just ask for it. And what happens is I may have an hour a day. Well, I do a lot more on LinkedIn because I'm a LinkedIn guy, but this pretend I have an hour today. What can I do in that hour that will make me I can get the most impact in the least amount of time? And that's your daily process,
Yeah.
Sure.
No, that sounds super useful. I wanted to talk a little bit we talked about how you really lay out from the beginning, and I think this is a really important thing, understanding who it is that you want to work with. And one of the ways that you do it specifically is you put out there that you're looking to work with business to business companies in the $200K to $5 million range. So you sort of put it right out there. So if I'm outside of that range, I immediately know that maybe I'm not a good fit. So
it will reduce your tire kickers.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me tell you one little thing, and I know I'm interrupting, Ryan.
Oh no, you're fine.
Before I did that, I was literally getting 50 meetings a week. 50. That's ridiculous. And most of them were tire kickers. They just want to have a talk. I don't know why. Yep. and that's, I can't operate that way because I have a business to run too. So I really can't handle more than like 20 meetings a week. Me personally, I'm not a sales guy, but I'm the owner of the company. So my meetings have to be around the 20 range, and that can be easily done. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You don't want to be open to the everything and the kitchen sink.
Right.
Avoid that.
So to that end, or the point or the question I was going to ask is, what about the individual or the company who maybe is a little below that range or can't afford that range or maybe isn't ready for a full-time engagement? But what could they do, or what would your advice be to somebody like that, maybe to prepare them to eventually be ready to use a service like yours?
Yeah, so I have found that even if they weren't in that range, they needed help, they would book the call. They'll do that because they need it. They're not. It's only going to deter the people that don't have any kind of budget or any kind of structure. So, that individual reaching out will I would say reach out to me if you need help. And if there's something I can do I'll just tell you what you need to do. But if you need help on the services, I'll say, well, for this amount, this can happen. But usually I require a lot of those individuals to guarantee that they have time to do those things.
Sure.
And so what I make sure that they're coachable. I make sure that they're committed. And so that's the biggest thing for me. And certain people are just not set up for success on LinkedIn yet. Say, for example, their profile talks about one thing and they have no banner. I'm just making stuff up. And it's not very clear on their services, but they're reaching out to someone. There's a 50% chance they're going to look at your profile before they connect. And there's a huge chance they're going to look at your profile for the services. So if you are not set up properly, I would suggest to get set up properly. Really understand it. It starts from my profile. It starts once I know my ICP and it's super clear on what I'm solving. It makes the search easier. I know exactly who I'm looking for. And you can go on your sales navigator and create your campaigns for your 1, 2, 3 kind of segments and all that and kind of go from there. So my suggestion is figure out, what the basics are, get a day-to-day process and start from there. And don't be too cheap. You have to put money into some of these things. Someone says, "Oh, the system is $18. Why should I pay $1,200?" I said, "Because that system will get you banned. That system will shut you down."
Yeah.
And you're consulting yourself. It's just like anything else. So you have to pay to play, but it doesn't have to be expensive. You have to have some honest conversations and have a budget set up and have the procedure. Another thing too is you want to design yourself to fire yourself off jobs. So someone said, "Oh, I hired an assistant and it didn't work out." Well, that usually happens because you're so good at your job. There's no way an assistant will appear in your mind. So this is business stuff, not really LinkedIn, but a lot of those processes that you do, you have to put from out of your head into paper. So your projects and procedures, your SOPs, they have to be laid out so anyone can follow, especially the repeatable processes. And a lot of business owners don't take time to do that. They don't take time to structure. So if you can't take 5 or 10 hours a week for the first month to really break down those processes, you're just doomed for, I wouldn't say doomed for failure, but you will not be as successful as you should be.
Yeah, I want to step back and talk about the pricing, getting the tire kickers out of the conversation. I did that myself recently, probably 5-10 years ago. I significantly raised my rates my thought process at the time was, I'm staying busy, but a lot of the clientele that I'm dealing with aren't the clientele I want to work with. So by raising my rates, I actually improved the clients that I was getting, and they were easier to work with.
Mm-hmm.
B, I had to do less events, and C, I was making the same kind of money. So I was doing less work, making the same money, and dealing with people that I enjoyed working with versus dealing with clients that were wanting the world for nothing and creating more headache than worth and running myself ragged just to get the same kind of paycheck. And I'm happy that I raised my rates, and now I'm getting to the point where I'm almost too busy.
It was scary at first, though, wasn't it?
It really was.
I'm gonna raise my rates, but no one's gonna want to work with me. I say salespeople say, "Oh no one would pay you $7,000 a month or what? Easy." I mean, it's easier than the $1,200 a month, because the $7,000 a month client or whatever already has income coming in. and they're looking for a result, and they're not going to go over your shoulder. It's not their last paycheck. You know, they're not putting their last
if they can
last bit
afford
of
that
money in
price
it.
point in the first place, that's not a big hurdle for them to overcome versus the person that can barely afford the 1,500.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to get them to stay on and be a retaining
my
client
gosh.
where that's every month.
Yeah.
That's hard to cut. Yeah.
You're so right, because again, certain people are not really designed for success, and some of these people are really, really good people. But I found out, like, I bring on clients, and if a sales guy brings one on to me, I don't necessarily accept it because I made a mistake of doing that before, and it was a lot of work. It was so much work that I could not bring on other clients on, so I was losing money keeping a client. So you have to understand when, hey, and people have different rules and stuff like that and whatever, and he goes, well, I promised him so-and-so. I said, well, I didn't promise him so-and-so.
Right.
I promised you this amount of, these are the things that we're going to do. But if you're going to dictate all these little areas, and I'm going to move left, move right, you're going to treat me more like an employee, or an assistant versus a business owner. And that's an easy trap to get into, especially like you're depending on that money to pay your bills, and you're mentally defocused. You're mentally blurry. If you are not sharp, you're not super clear, it will stop you from bringing other business in, because people sense that. They'll say, "Oh, he seems good on paper, but something's wrong with him." I don't care what, but I don't think I'll work with him, and so that has happened to me where, I just couldn't mentally have enough time to go and do my normal prospecting or whatever I do to convert business.
Yeah. Well, and also the fact that, when Ryan asked, well, if someone can't afford or doesn't have that $200K to $500,000 coming in, they'll still contact you. Who's to say that, like, it's a slow month when that event is coming up, so why not take it at a discount just to keep your calendar full? I still do that as well too. It's like, I'm not against helping someone else out who doesn't really have the budget to the $4,000 to hire me. If they have $3,000 and it's on an off day and they don't need the lighting package or they don't need this or that, I might work with them. You never know.
I would agree with you and disagree with you. I don't do discounts. Never do this. But if they don't have the lighting, or they don't have, you're taking things off to reduce the cost. So someone that has like you said, a $1,500 budget a month versus $7,000, there's certain things to allocate.
Sure.
But if they want, they want volume, they want to get in-mail blast, thousands of stuff to send out. They want all these other people to market. These people cost money. So do you want one account working on your business, or do you want 20 accounts working on your business? Well, 20 accounts is going to cost more money than one account. Do you want a closer?
I guess in my situation where I'm a solopreneur, I don't have a lot of people working with me. I can be a little bit more flexible versus, like someone like you who has to rely on other vendors or has 20 people working on a
I would add too, though. I mean, I think the point is that it's a matter of latitude, right? And so even for Troy, maybe he wouldn't be discounting his service, but maybe if he calls somebody or somebody calls him up in earnest, it's like, hey, we don't quite make as much money as you want, but we are getting to that point, and we just need to talk to somebody, and they're at least kind of putting themselves out there. I mean, it would be up to Troy's discretion, of course, to offer a little bit of just advice in the spirit of being helpful. It doesn't mean that I'm going to go to work for you. It doesn't mean you can hire me. It doesn't mean any of that. But it's like, hey, I understand in earnest you're reaching out to me. Maybe you want to be a client in 6 months. Maybe by then you'll be ready. So I don't want to screw you over and tell you to get pack sand. Come back when you have a bunch of money. But at the same time, when you've got the realities of other fixed costs, you can only do so much.
Yeah, you can't go in a negative, or you'll be known for that, and it'll be not a time suck, but it'll be a mental suck as well.
Yeah.
You want to avoid that. So what I really appreciate are the people that are passionate about their business or what they do. You know, people love people that are passionate. So if you don't have the money, but you have the willpower to do something and you're doing something great, you know, I always say for example, I create the Scoop application. I have an interesting story on it. I didn't have the $250,000 to build it, you know, but I hustled my way. I created relationships in order to reduce that cost so I can get that done. I got it done on timeline. So there's a certain fire in there, and the approach is about personalized communications. So we're all here to sort of, I wouldn't say change the world, but make an impact in the significant areas that we're at. If I feel that that person is on point, he's going to make it. That means he'll put effort. You know, that means he's coachable. He'll pay me something, and I won't go negative on it, and I can build additional services on top of that. But I appreciate honesty and I appreciate passion. And so those are the things that will sway me and sway a lot of other individuals. And the LinkedIn community by itself is really a great group of people. If it wasn't for some of those, I got guest speakers that come up all the time. I got other people that we did LinkedIn courses together. I couldn't have done it without them, you know, and because they have the same passion and they're just really, really good people to work with. So I like working with good people, you know.
So why don't you actually break down your app for us, Scoop? It's a plugin on Chrome. When you go and download it, what does it actually do for you?
Oh, yeah. So we named it Scoop. Well, we couldn't buy SCOOP because it was already taken. So we just put a K in it. So the domain is scoopapp.com. I think that's what it is. And so the problem was there were a lot of bots on LinkedIn. Yeah. And a lot of sequence of messages and all that. And so LinkedIn DMs weren't converting that well, you know. And I said, well, what if we go opposite of AI and add an AI component in it? And I said, okay, so what do people need? They need a better flow. So we made a LinkedIn specific application. So it's a Chrome extension, but it's a whole application behind it. It will provide ability to do candid video on this vertical mode, horizontal mode, square. It will allow you to title the video. It'll allow one click. That's a big thing. You ever click something on LinkedIn and it says, hey, you're leaving LinkedIn?
You're leaving the website. Yeah.
Yeah. Mine doesn't do that. Mine goes straight to the video, and it has the title on it, and it has the booking link. It has a built-in booking link in it. It has a way to store messages. So I have like 10 or 15 messages in there. So if it's a welcome, I can click a button. It'll drop the text for first. I'll adjust it, of course, and then drop the video later. So I like to provide context when they look at it. Like, oh, okay, a one-sentence message. Oh, and the video corresponds with the title. It kind of flows really well. And you can go from one video to another to another. It also has ChatGPT in it, where it has a built-in booking link in case you don't want to buy a booking link. We have a built-in one, or you can use your own. You know, he'll sync up to your calendar and everything. And also, we're adding additional features. So one feature we're adding is screen recording, and it'll look a little different than the Loom or the Vidyard stuff and all that. It'll have a nice rectangular phone view on it. We're also adding features so it works with Gmail. We just added that last week. It will work with Microsoft 360. What else? We're looking at it for content. So there's two big areas in LinkedIn. It's the direct messaging, all the messages, including in-mails and all that. And then there's content. I said, those are two huge markets that we can help solve. Well, why do people don't create content? Well, because it's not that easy unless you know how to use Canva or you know, video software. I said, what if Scoop just record the video and you can use that for the content, which you can right now. It's not streamlined to it. So the next version coming up probably within the 30 to 45 days is going to be the ability to do some Instagram kind of filters and ability to do captions and stuff. So you can create your whole video right then and spit it back up. And on the comments, you can even add videos that get better, you know, engagement. And so it's really one tool that does a lot of stuff for personalized communication, and
Nice.
so, so I had the idea, and I wrote up on a napkin, and I drew it. I took a picture of it. I wrote a bunch of stuff down. 2-3 hours later, we had an SOW ready to go. So this is what we're doing, guys. Let's get it done.
That's awesome. Well, no, it's very cool, and I'm interested to try it out. It's a funny LinkedIn story. I got a message today from a guy named Rodrigo, who I sent a message to in 2015 that I would be in Barcelona, and if you wanted to meet while I was in Barcelona, we could. And I got a text or a message from him today, 9 years later. So anyway, we've reconnected, and we're having a little chat right now. And I'll have to I'll have to try out the Scoop and shoot him.
I'll give you a link.
So anyway, but yeah. So I guess here in sort of the closing moments, Troy, do you want to just take a quick minute, let people know how they can connect with you, where they can find you online, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, the easiest place to go is LinkedIn. Just type my first and last name, Troy. Last name's Hipolito, Hipolito. And on my tagline, I'm known as a not so boring LinkedIn guy, in case you get another Troy Hipolito out over there. So the other place you can go is to the website. It's thetroyagency.com. And there's a little schedule button, big old blue button on the top right. Schedule 20 minutes if you need to have a chat. Always open to help. If there's no availability, then I'm sure you'll find my phone number and text me. So
Love it.
Cool. And then I just wanted to add to the just to confirm the scoopapp.com is the website for Scoop. It's SKOOP.app.com. So scoopapp.com is where you can go learn more about that. Well, cool, Troy. Thanks so much. We really appreciate you taking the time to visit with us today. It was a great conversation and lots of good stuff in there. Thanks, guys.
I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much to everybody who tunes into the show this week and every week. We'll see you guys next time.